they're almost always going to view character-driven stories over plot-driven stories, almost always. They're also going to almost always align with current political thought, usually current political thought that is more liberal in nature. And I want to know, there's tension every year, and it's especially true when you're talking about what I usually term geek films, right? These films that are like sci-fi, superhero,
like genre filmmaking, right?
genre films. Yep, genre
Yeah.
films. There's always this tension of like, why isn't the Academy nominating these for some of the best pictures? So this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, first of all, what is the Academy actually looking for versus what people are looking for? And is there a difference?
Yeah.
There seems to be, but what is it? And then I want to talk about like why that is, or how we could solve that, or should we even care about that? So let's just start first of all with saying, what do you think the Academy is actually looking for when the Academy nominates stories and films?
I think that they usually look for, and I agree with this.
Mm.
I think that they look for important stories. So
Mm.
whether that's talking about social issues, or it's reflecting back on a time through a different lens, or it's looking at cinema in a fantastical way. Like if you were looking at, like a couple of years ago, we were talking about Guillermo del Toro, like Shape of Water 1.
Yeah.
It is a nod, an homage to Creature from the Black Lagoon, but
Right.
told in a totally different way. And the cinematography and the acting is so great that that is wonderful. Or like Licorice Pizza is this look at the valley, at Los Angeles through a historical lens, through a different way.
Mm.
You can look at Power of the Dog. Power of the Dog is a story that is basically like hateful Brokeback Mountain is the best I can, like, the best term I can use for it. In a way, I think an important story to tell, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Sure.
Even, and again, don't look up talking about like why it got nominated. I think it got nominated because it's telling us what's happening in the world and joking about it in a way
Mm.
that makes it palpable. Um, like Ghostbusters Afterlife isn't an important story.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's fantastical, it's silly, but it's not really that important. And then in the other categories like acting, they're truly looking at what the best performances are.
Right.
Typically, they're within those same best picture films, but sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of films, and I've talked to you about this before, where you go like, this film wasn't that great, but
Yeah.
the acting was really good.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so I don't mind. I think a lot of people have this huge gripe of like, why isn't Spider Man, or why aren't other genre films
Right.
involved? And sometimes they are. Lord of the Rings being a huge one,
Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, like, I don't mind what the Oscars bring to the table.
Yes.
I think there's an important reason why that is too, both for the arts and economics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think you're nailing a lot of the same things that I was going to bring up too. Because so the first thing I have to say is, as a person who has actually run a competition before, so for context, I worked at a university where I ran a competition for student and alumni teams who were starting companies and starting businesses. They're entrepreneurs, and what we did was we had them pitch to people who were angel investors, venture capitalists, other entrepreneurs and startup founders. And the whole time what we were trying to get is we were trying to understand like which one of these teams deserves, we were giving away a lot of money. We are giving $15,000 in cash away to these teams to help them start their business.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I learned about running a competition is that there's a lot of politics involved. The politics that are, and when I say politics, I don't mean the politics of like our government system, but the politics of like, do are the students and alumni, are they playing a political game with the, in other words, it's not just a challenge to say who's the best. It's also a challenge to say, well, who do I like the most, or who do I want to give $15,000 to because I like the way they interact with me and I think that they're looking for advice. And yeah, maybe this idea is not as good, but like the founders of this team are better at interacting with people, and I think they have a better shot at like making it. Or there's so many different things that go into it that when you're giving away these prizes like an Oscar, the level of, if you're nominated, that should be the prize. And I've watched all these teams be devastated in our
Yeah.
competition, right? Who didn't win. But the reality is, like, what separates the winners from the losers at the top category is so minor. I mean, like, if you heard the conversations that go on behind the scenes about why they gave an award to one team over another, it's this, and this is the same thing with the Oscars, because the Oscars is political times a million of the competition that we were running, right? Like
Yeah.
these are, because there's so much money involved, and if something wins an Oscar, it is going to get more views. It is going to
Yeah.
get, it's going to get picked up. People, like places like Netflix and streaming services, will want to purchase it because they can advertise it to people. It's like, this is an Oscar winner. And so there's so much monetization that you can't expect purity. there's
Right.
too much, I don't want to say it's corrupt, because it's not necessarily corrupt, but there's a lot of jockeying going on, which makes it very political,
I
which is
think on the
difficult.
I think on the other side of that, from a I mean, obviously there's the politics side of it, and right, there's like a bunch of people paying to be considered for an
Right.
Oscar,
Right.
and people want to get nominated, even if you're not a winner.
Yeah.
Nominees, those like top 10 nominees all get more views.
Yeah.
Um, on the other side of it, though, like when we talk about over the last couple of years, people have really talked about how nobody shows up to the theaters anymore unless it's for a big tentpole film like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Right.
Or yeah. Anyways, any
No Way
Spider-Man
Home.
film,
No
I
Way
guess.
Home. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, No Way Home.
But any of them. Yeah.
Well,
Any Spider-Man film. Yeah.
yeah, but any Spider-Man movie. I mean, any superhero movie at this point. Nobody's showing up to the theater to see King Richard.
Right. Right.
The thing that the Oscars is now doing in the 21st century is that it's keeping independent film alive.
True.
It is from that kind of standpoint of like the theater, the industry of filmmaking.
Yeah.
It is keeping the non-genre filmmaking alive. Like it used to
Yeah.
be like genre film was looked down upon. Now genre film is the only thing people are seeing.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so it's cool to see some of these films that are more indie, more artsy, more um, trying to tell an interesting side of a story, keeping it alive.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the Oscars is now really doing. It's no longer a celebration of the best films of the year.
Yep.
It's more a celebration of films that you probably didn't see.
Right. 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 Yeah. And I think that too, like, I mean, stories do several things, right? Stories entertain us, they enlighten and reveal to us something that we did not know before. I think the ultimate, and you and I have talked about this again, not on a podcast before, but just interpersonally, there's a shared human experience that we all have, and films and stories give us the ability to share those human experiences throughout a creative medium. And so I think what you nailed it. And I'm going to add a few more things to what you said when you said what the Academy prefers. So they're almost always going to view character driven stories over plot driven stories, almost
Yeah.
always. They're also going to almost always align with current political thought, usually current political thought that is more liberal in nature. And I don't mean that I don't mean that necessarily as like a political party definition, but liberal thought meaning like we're pushing the boundaries of what people might consider to be the norm today, and we're seeing if there's ways of exploring that in different or new ways. So for example, you see something like Coda win. Coda is saying, have you thought about the hearing impaired community lately? Right. And have you thought about, and by the way, it's not just about I haven't seen the film all the way through, but from what I know of it, it's also not about that. But have you seen what it's like to be in lower class Caucasian communities that tend to be sometimes forgotten in our conversations about what's going on, right? Um, and that's revealing of like, oh, okay, this is a way that this story is showcasing an experience that most of us don't have. And I think that's what the Academy loves, that kind of thing. They want to shine a light on particular issues in that kind of way. And the general audience, a lot of times, is more so just looking to be entertained. Like, I don't care about this right now because I have a hard. Well, a lot of what people think is, and I don't mean to dumb down the general audience at all because I'm part of the general audience. Let's face it. But I think a lot of times what we're not looking for those kinds of stories. We're looking for the chance to be encouraged, the chance to see heroics, the chance to be engaged in a way that reminds us of what our value system is or should be. And so when we're given these other kinds of stories, not that we don't like those, I love tragedies, for example, but a lot of times that's not what the most amount of people are going to see. That's going to be a smaller amount of people who care about different kinds of things. And then you just had this disconnect with what the Academy is looking for versus what the general audience is looking for.